If you want to drive the most British car ever, what do you get? If you want to comfortably fit 4 adults in the smallest possible space, what do you get? If you want to steal millions in mafia gold and escape through Italy using car parkour, even though it's not mathematically possible based on the curb weight, what do you get? You get the Mini. The Mini's story begins nearly 3,000 miles away from Britain in the sandy deserts of the Sinai Peninsula. Britain and France pressured Israel to invade the Egyptian-owned Sinai in order to regain control of the Suez Canal. And let's just cut a long story short, after a few months of fighting, occupation, negotiation, a ceasefire was reached and nothing really changed, territorially speaking. There was one result, though, that we do care about in this video. Oil supply to Britain from the Middle East was halted, and fuel rationing began. The lack of fuel made the British do what the Americans would do 20 years later during their Arab-Israeli war fallout: stop buying big cars. Small, especially German bubble cars, began exploding in popularity, and Leonard Lord, the head of the British Motor Corporation BMC, absolutely despised them. He hated them so much that he vowed to crush them with a proper miniature car. So he tasked designers Alec Azonis and John Shepard to build a new microcar based on his requirements. Specifically, the engine should be an existing unit to cut costs, the dimensions should be no more than 10 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet, and the passenger compartment must use at least 60% of the available platform. And there was one more dimension requirement specified by Azonis. There had to be enough storage space in the boot for all the necessary ingredients for a dry martini. Very British of them. Such tiny dimensions made it a challenge to fit the drivetrain with 4 adults in such a small package. The solution? Mount the A-Series inline-4 engine sideways, making the engine bay as small as possible. The revolutionary transverse layout also made it easier to power the front wheels, eliminating the necessity of a drive shaft at the back. No drive shaft meant that the new Mini car had a perfectly flat floor for maximum interior space. The car was pretty small, dare I say mini, and the name stuck. The Mini's dimensions meant that the whole thing weighed less than 1,300 pounds, so sure, it only had an 848cc engine making 33 horsepower. But it was a rocket ship compared to other economy cars. It's basically a practical road-legal go-kart. I mean, the wheelbase is only 40 inches shorter than the car itself, making it super nimble, while the lightweight made it responsive, perfect for blasting down British B-roads. And the conical rubber suspension system meant that it was stable through the corners, while also being comfortable and maintenance-free since it's a passive system. The result of all of this was a sensation. Regardless of whether you bought a Morris Mini Minor, or an 850, or a Leyland, Rover, Riley, an Ascenti, Wolseley, or even an Austin C7N, the other C7N, you got yourself a fantastic car. The base Mini costs just $1,300 and could get nearly 45 mpg while being practical enough for the whole family. And the base 2-door sedan was just a start. There was a Woody estate car, a panel van, the world's smallest pickup truck, and even an off-roader. The Mini Moke was designed to be a light reconnaissance vehicle for the British Airborne. At only 406 kilograms, you could easily parachute it out the back with the troops in an airborne assault. But being based on a Mini, the ground clearance was far too low for military operations, so BMC tried to make a four-wheel drive version for the US Army by adding a second engine and gearbox to the back axle. This made the ground clearance even worse, so it too was rejected. Somehow, the Moke did actually see combat in the Rhodesian Bush War in present-day Zimbabwe, and it sucked there too. But BMC didn't seem to care and simply sold the Moke to the public as a beach buggy, a move that got them 50,000 sales and a cult status that still exists today. But if we're going to talk about the Mark I Mini, there's only one version that matters. The Mini was a fantastic handling car and people quickly began proving it, but with only 33 horsepower, a 0 to 60 time of 27 seconds, meant that 99 out of 100 times it was never going to stand a chance of competition. But John Cooper saw potential nonetheless. For those of you who didn't think anything of that name, let me fill you in. John Cooper co-founded the Cooper Car Company in 1947, a company that saw him, his father, and Jack Brabham design the first Grand Prix car with a mid-engine layout. This revolution allowed the small Cooper team working out of an abandoned airfield to beat the crap out of Enzo Ferrari in the Formula One World Championship. Cooper and Brabham scored back-to-back titles in 1959 and 1960, changing performance cars forever. He was a pretty big deal, and he was also a good friend of Igazonis. A partnership was created and an airfield was found. Cooper decided to turn the nimble go-kart into a rallying powerhouse. After all, one of the few things the Mini had already won was the 1960 Cork 20 rally in Ireland, which means at first more power was needed, so a 1.1-liter engine was used to double the power figure up to 76 horsepower and 79 torque. Then, Cooper retuned the suspension for far more aggressive driving and gave it disc brakes. The result was a Group 2 rally car for the road, and it did very well. Between 1962 and 1972, it won 31 international rallies, including the famous Monte Carlo rally 4 times in a row. Only technically 3 times, since they were disqualified in 1966 from a 1-2-3 finish after using the wrong headlight filaments. They also ruled Rallycross, taking his first win in 1967, his first European Championship in 1974, and competing until 1979. And as late as 2012, a Mini 970 was used to break the sub-1 liter class at Bonneville for a speed record when Project 64 reached 156 miles an hour with a streamlined body and a 350 horsepower 970cc engine. But the most fascinating motorsport the Mini got up to was right at home in the British Saloon Car Championship. The Mini entered its first BSCC in 1961 and took the victory on the first try. They thought that was so cool that they did it again the next year. And then the muscle cars arrived. Ford Mustangs, Galaxies, and Chevy Camaros began encroaching upon this sacred British event. But it led to a brilliant David versus Goliath showdown. The big V8s would unleash some American shock and awe down the straights, only to be caught right back up by the little Minis and their superior cornering speeds. The racing was excellent, and despite the big V8 monster's best efforts, the little 4-cylinders took the championship 3 more times. In 1969, 1978, and 1979, 18 years after its first BSCC title. The original Mini was constantly evolved through various marques over the years, including the 1275 GT in 1969, the various limited editions of the Mark IV, and the addition of airbags of the Mark VI and the Mark V's ERA Turbo. Built by Engineering Research Applications, the Turbo was the only original Mini with forced induction. No surprise then, it is also the most powerful original Mini at 94 horsepower. It was the equivalent to a 911 GT2 RS with lower ride height, vented disc brakes, aluminum rims, and specially designed adjustable suspension that increased the toe-in of the front wheels to reduce torque steer. Only 436 were made between 1989 and 1991, but good things can't last forever, and the last Mini rolled off the assembly line in October 2000. Just like all the others, it was built by hand with body lines that were a splitting image of the first Mini that rolled off the line in 1959. Across those 41 years, over 5.3 million Minis were sold, outliving the MG Metro that was supposed to replace it. For his contributions to British motoring, Sir Alec Izonis was knighted by the Queen in 1969, and he wasn't the only one awarded. The British public recognized it as the most British car ever built, beating out the Range Rover and even the Jaguar E-Type. And in 1999, a group of 133 automotive journalists from 33 different countries rated the most important car of the 20th century. The Mini finished second, behind only the Ford Model T. That would have been a glorious note to end on, a bittersweet goodbye to one of the greatest cars of all time. But BMW had the final say. You see, BMW bought Rover and therefore Mini in 1994, so while the original Mini was running its last few years, BMW was working on a new Mini for the new century. Now Mini was the brand while Cooper was the car. It was a lot bigger than the OG at 2,300 pounds, but it was still pretty mini by modern standards. It was also safer, had more amenities, and made more power. The 1.6-liter Tritec inline 4 made 116 horsepower unless you got the Cooper S version. Like the S from 1962, the modern S had a new exhaust, bigger 17-inch wheels to fit bigger brakes, along with revised suspension and a supercharger to make 163 horsepower. It was a proper Golf GTI rival with some clean throwback styling for good measure. There were many variants of this new Mini, ultimately culminating in the Mini John Cooper Works Grand Prix. Only 2,000 were built with the assistance of Bertone to be a track-focused, hardcore Mini. It had racing suspension, bigger sport tires, and 88 pounds removed from the already skimpy weight. It was a fantastic handling car, and yet Mini wasn't done. The Cooper was such a success that BMW expanded the brand. There was a Clubman Estate car in 2008, then the Mini Coupe in 2012, and the Paceman in 2013. And they were all kind of forgettable. I bet you guys didn't even know there was a thing called the Paceman in 2013, huh? So instead, we're going to focus on, shockingly, Mini's first crossover, the Countryman. It was a raised, four-wheel drive Mini that was bigger in every single way. More power, more room, and more pricey. Although 28 grand isn't exactly gonna break the bank. And it worked. Over 250,000 were sold in 3 years, compared to 181,000 Mini Coopers. There's even a John Cooper Works version of the Countryman that makes 300 horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds, which is a perfect segue into our next topic. I should make clear, though, the Cooper never really left motorsport given its qualities as a DIY race car, but the Countryman marked Mini's return to factory-backed competition, entering both the World Rally Championship and the World Rally Cross Championship between 2011 and 2013. It wasn't very good, if I'm honest. It only got 3 podiums, including a second at the 2012 Monte Carlo Rally, before shuttering the program after Finland 2013. Maybe their lack of success was due to minimal financial investment, or maybe it was because their eyes were wandering elsewhere. Wandering all the way to South America to the Dakar Rally. While it no longer races to Dakar Senegal due to pesky terrorism, it's still one of the premier rally raid events in the world. Mini teamed up with X-Ray to build the Countryman, all 4, and it was really bloody good, winning 4 years in a row for realsies this time between 2012 and 2015. They also finished second in 2016 and 2019 before Peugeot and Toyota became a force to be reckoned with. So Mini upped their game with the John Cooper Works buggy for 2020. Carlos Sainz took the wheel and beat Toyota to the finish, winning the Dakar Rally once again. A feat Mini replicated in 2021, making it their 6th win in 10 years. But let's get back to the basics. The 3rd generation of the new Mini launched in 2014, and it's the biggest ever, gaining a few inches in just about every direction to gain more room on the interior and for storage space. It also got a new trim level, the Cooper SE, the first ever production electric Mini Cooper. The 181 electric motor adds 500 pounds to the weight, becoming the first Cooper to exceed 3,000 pounds. By 9 pounds, but still, it garnered quite a bit of praise. But I do have an issue with it, and many others agree with me on this. The SE has a range of only 144 miles, and while it's similar to the Honda E, the Honda looks better and drives better. So if you want a truly great new Mini, you have to go back to the internal combustion engine with the newest John Cooper Works GP. It makes over 300 horsepower, features a crossbar instead of a back seat, and has an aero kit more in line with a touring car than a road car. All of this means it is the fastest Mini ever made. Its 0 to 60 time of 4.7 seconds is the fastest front-wheel drive car that Car and Driver has ever tested. It also pulls, near enough makes no difference, 1G in the corners and lapped the Nürburgring in under 8 minutes. Pretty impressive for a 300 horsepower front-wheel drive hatchback. It's a true successor to John Cooper's original masterpiece, but my question is, where does Mini go from here?